Thank you. Um, Distinguished fellow ministers, eminent scholars, ladies and gentlemen, Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. I want to thank the organizers for arranging this very timely conference on security and the post COVID 19 strategic transformation. Before I do that, I want to express my condolences and prayers for the lives lost in the Izmir earthquake. And I want to reiterate the Pakistan government and people's support for any aid and assistance that our Turkish brethren may require, because we have not forgotten the wonderful and supreme support given to us in the earthquake we suffered in 2005 by the people and government of Turkey. After the Spanish pandemic over 100 years ago, the world is in the grip of another pandemic, which is the COVID 19 pandemic. As of now, more than 45 million people have been affected the world over, and 1 million lives have been lost. A second wave of the disease is cresting and seems to be surpassing earlier numbers of daily infections and deaths. The health concerns of the pandemic are obvious enough. It has also severely impacted the global economy and everyday life of individuals and nations. We had, of course, before the pandemic, been reaping the benefits of interconnectedness for quite some time. But COVID 19 has shown the reverse side, the flip side of this interconnectedness. It has shown that no one is safe unless everyone is safe. The challenge of our times is to make everyone safe. Ladies and gentlemen, the common wisdom would have been that the cooperative multilateralism would help address the complex challenges that have arisen out of this pandemic. But sadly, when the crunch came, each country was left to fend for itself, or choose to do so in a matter, or they chose to do so in a matter of deliberate policy. Countries and societies turned inwards. For instance, barriers and borders, the long consigned to history, for example, like the European Union, suddenly rose up again. These physical barriers were only an outward manifestation of a more serious mental and psychological barrier that has been coming up everywhere. The global crisis should have brought humanity together, but the international community, unfortunately, has so far failed to see the common danger. In fact, instead, the pandemic has revealed fault lines and accentuated existing and emerging threats to international peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, at the global level, there is an emergence of new rivalries and resurgence of old conflicts. Tensions between major states are rising, and progress on international stability has been reversed. Key arms control arrangements are being undermined. A qualitative arms race characterized by the development of ever deadlier weapons and more sophisticated weapons is now underway. Just when the time came to repose our confidence in addressing collective threats collectively through multilateralism, nations of the world opted to go their separate ways. Not only that, the value and utility of multilateralism and multilateral institutions is being questioned and daily undermined. The most important international global institution, the United Nations, was unable to fulfill the role expected of it because of the unwillingness of major powers to cooperate. When the UN Secretary General Guterres made a passionate plea in March this year for an immediate global ceasefire in all corners of the world, it carried very little impact. Thereafter, the UN Security Council could not arrive at a consensus for almost 4 months. Meanwhile, conflicts in various corners of the world continue to rage non-stop. The World Health Organization, our supposed sentinel against the kind of scourges we are confronting today, became another arena, sadly, for interstate rivalry and recriminations rather than a vehicle for collective and cooperative action. Rather than coming together and setting our differences aside, we are witnessing a global resurgence in intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violence against minorities and other vulnerable groups in many countries, accompanied by extreme nationalism, xenophobia, and aggression. Prejudice, discrimination, and violence against Muslims, including Islamophobia, is one of the major manifestations of these extreme trends. Islamic shrines and holy places are being destroyed. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, insulted. The Holy Quran burnt, perversely, all in the name of freedom of expression and opinion. The hypocrisy of Western states, especially some members of the EU, has become too overt for us to ignore. It is unfortunate that Islamophobia has become a political strategy for electoral and political gains and for combating failing approval ratings. The Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, has called on the UN General Assembly to declare an international day to combat Islamophobia. He has also written to the leaders of Muslim states, urging them to collectively take the lead in breaking the cycle of hate and extremism and to raise their voices against Islamophobia. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps in times of human crisis, human nature needs a scapegoat. However, in India, this human failing has become a national official trait. There we are witnessing the rise of Hindutva, extremist ideology under the RSS BJP politico-religious combine which now rules India. This has resulted in complicity of state institutions in acts of violence against Muslims, cow vigilantism, discriminatory